Hi, I'm Barb Schweitzer. Welcome to Mendo Moondrop earrings on Beaducation.com. We're going to be using seed beads and two sizes of crystals today to make a really nice drop shape. The earring itself is simple to do if you know already how to do right angle weave. We consider this in an intermediate to advanced class, so it's helpful to already have a grasp of the basic stitch. Like all the classes here on Beaducation.com, we recommend that you watch your way through the video once before beginning the project. It really does help to move you through the project more quickly and easily. So the materials for today's project for the Mendo Moondrop, we're going to be using size 11 seed beads, and I recommend using two different colors. Size 15 seed beads, and again, two different colors. 3mm bicone crystals and 4mm bicone crystals. And then to finish your earring, you're going to need a pair of ear wires, whichever style is your preference, and two 2-inch long head pins. The other materials that you're going to be using for the Mendo Moondrop is 6-pound fireline, and you can either use the crystal that I'm using here or the gray. Either one is fine, it just depends on your color palette. You're also going to be using a size 12 beading needle, so long and fine. For the last step of the Mendo Moondrop, you're going to also need a pair of round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, and a pair of cutters for making the wire wrapped loop. So to start, you're going to string on 4 beads of your accent color. I normally go back through 3 out of those 4 beads and pull my tension up snug. For your next stitch, you're stringing on 3 seed beads and passing back through your origin bead once again to add a second stitch, and then go through 2 more beads to take you back to the opposite side of where you started. You had 3 beads, put on a 3rd stitch, again going back through 2 beads so you're on the far side of where you started. So you'll complete a 3rd stitch, and then you need to join your 1st and 3rd stitches together with a 4th stitch. So string on 1 seed bead, go back through the 1st stitch, and pull it up snug. So it looks a little bit like a jumble when you get to this point, but just try and persist and hold the tension as well as you possibly can so that you can tell which beads to go through. You're going to pick up 1 more seed bead, pass back through the bead where you started before you strung the first one. Try not to get your tail caught up in here. So technically what you've made is a little cube. You have to do 1 more step on this cube though to make it secure. So go through 1 more bead. Remember, you're just following through the thread path. Don't make up any new thread paths and don't cross any intersections as you do this. So I'm going to turn. Remember, this is a cube. When we put the thing together in the first place, we've stitched around all 4 of the sides. You'll need to stitch around each end as well once you've completed the first 4 stitches, so that it's on all 4 sides. You'll see a piece of thread running from each bead to the bead next to it, making your finished piece a cube. Stitched securely through all the sides of the cube, you're going to start to build a straight row from, it doesn't matter, any one of the beads on the side. So you're going to string 3 of your second color, of your main color, Pull it up snug, go through 2 beads in that same stitch. You're passing back through, and then you're going to add your next stitch, and you're going to continue in this way until you have 12 stitches, including the cube. Just count this as 1 stitch. So every time you do it, you're going to string on 3, pull snug, go through 2, and this way you're going to continue to work in the same direction. Try to keep your tension pretty good as you're going through this so that it's not too loose, so that your units really do sit at 90-degree angles to one another. So from that first stitch, you're going to continue adding stitches on using size 11 seed beads. Each time you add a new stitch, you'll string on 3 beads, and then you'll go through 2 more, and then add on your next stitch.
And how many do we need?
For a total of 12 stitches, including the cube, which only counts as 1 stitch because we're only using it on the 1 stitch width. Once you've completed 12 stitches, and you can count by looking at the number of beads along the edge, so 12 units of stitching, you're going to join this together to turn it into a loop. So from the end bead, you're going to pick up 1 seed bead, and you're going to go back into the cube directly across from where you exited it when you began building the row. Pull it snug, pick up 1 more seed bead, and return to the end stitch in the row. This closes it into a loop that's a total of 13 stitches. You're going to keep going back down the side until you've moved down 4 stitches. This gives you a chance to tighten up any loose tension you might have. You're going to keep going down this side until you're in the 4th stitch down from the cube, counting it as 1, 2, 3, and 4. Make sure as you're repositioning yourself that you're following back through the thread path, not cutting across the intersections. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start building the curved arc across the bottom. To do this, you're going to need some size 11s and your 4mm crystals. String on 2 11s, string on 2 11s or 4mm and 2 more 11s, and pass back through your exit bead to make a loop and another stitch. It's sort of an irregular wedge shape. Then you're going to go up those 2 beads on the side there, add another crystal and 2 more seed beads, and pass through the base 1 stitch over, keeping in mind you're working in a loop here. To complete this 2nd stitch, go back to your 2 origin beads here on the side. Back through the crystal, back down the 2 seed beads. Once you come out of these 2 seed beads, you're going to hop over into the next stitch in the base, pull snug, and string 2 seed beads and another 4mm crystal, and go down the side, the 2 second color beads on the side. As you do this, you're building a curve. As you can see, the beads really want to pull into this shape. And there's a lot of tension being built up into this piece as you go. So it's a good idea to just go through one side at a time. So down this side, pull it snug, through the base, pull it snug, back up this side, same thing. If you're coming up out of 2, the first thing you're going to add is a crystal, and then 2 seed beads, and then back to the bead in the base, up through the side to complete it, through the crystal, back over, and then hop into the next stitch. It seems like it's slower to go through each set of these and pull the tension up tight, but if you do that, you get a lot better tension in the overall piece, and what you're basically doing is you're pulling directional tension. So the tension is going in the direction you want it to, making the beads sit exactly where they should once all the thread is pulled tight. So we're moving on to our 5th stitch here in the loop. 2 seed beads and a crystal. Go back down through this side. Through the base again. And up the side. This is still really right angle weave. It's just that in the world of your 4 sides, the base is 1, the doubled pair is 2, the crystal is 3, and the other pair is 4. Remember, with right angle, you're always sharing stitches with either the previous stitch or the previous stitch, and in this case, the previous row. So this is what your piece should look like so far. The tension's pretty good, and you've got a whole bunch of wedges coming off of this base stitch. On the other side, it looks really odd, but we'll fix that in a second as we go on to the next step. Now we're putting on the last stitch here in the loop. Go back up through the side and into the last crystal on the end. So this is what it looks like once you've got the loop started. You'll have 6 crystals on coming up out of the size 11 seed beads. With your bead, or with your thread exiting the crystal, what you want to do is actually flip this piece over so that you're looking at it from the other side. You're going to pick up two seed beads. And you're going to go through the base stitch on the opposite side of the original row that you created. Next, you're going to string on 2 more seed beads and return into the crystal again. To reposition your needle and thread for the next stitch, you'll need to go back down through 2 seed beads, the base, and the side, and then you're going to go into the next crystal. From there, you're going to pick up 2, go through the next stitch in the base, and pass up through the side. It will look the same on this back side as it does on the front side. What you're technically doing here is building a double-faced element. There'll be 2 sets of legs next to each crystal on both sides. The shared bead here is the crystal. So once you've finished the last loop and you're between the fifth and 6th bead, you're going to string on 2 11s and a 15. You're going to ignore the 15 and pass back through that second 11. Flip the piece over so that you can see where you're going. String on 1 more 11 and go back down the 2 side beads on the opposite side of the crystals. This way you end up with a little picot that sits up between the 2 beads. Then you're going to go back through your base bead, up the side, and then your needle is positioned between the 4th and 5th bead in the arc. Between the 4th and 5th bead on the arc, you're going to string 2 11s, a 3mm crystal, and 3 15s. Pass back through the 3mm crystal and the second 11 that you've strung, and pull everything up snug. You may have to wiggle the beads around a little bit on the thread to get them to go into position. From there, you're going to string 1 more 11 and go down through the 2 11s on the opposite side in the arc. And again, pull your tension up tight, and you want to make sure that this little picot here sits in a nice triangle like that. Through the base and up through the next side. You're coming up now between the 3rd and 4th crystal in the arc, and you're going to string 2 11s, a 4mm crystal, and 3 15s. I always slide mine down the thread, flip the piece over, and you're going to go back through the 4mm and the second 11 strung. Pull everything up snug so your picot sits correctly. String 1 more 11 and go down the 2 little legs on the opposite side. Down through the base. And back up. From here, you're going to repeat what you did on this side with the 3mm in this spot, and then mirror image and create what you did over here with just the size 11s and the 15 on this one. After you do the last up and over embellishment and you come down the 2 beads on the side, go back through your base bead, and we're ready to start stringing some embellishments, and we're going to put them in between each one of these stitches going up the side. So pick up an 11, go through the side bead in the base, next stitch up, another 11, same thing, and another one. When you get to the 11 that's closest to your cube, normally you would go straight up this one and string a bead in here, But in this case, when you're doing this particular embellishment, you're going to go straight out of the last side bead of the stitch directly into the side bead going this direction. So, and pull it up snug. This is an important part of keeping the teardrop shape in this piece, and if you do put an embellishment bead in there, it wants to become a round circle instead of a teardrop. So now I'm in the top, go around just the top of the cube. And down into that side bead, headed back down toward the curve. I'll flip this over. And then directly from that side bead, just as you did on the other side, directly from the side bead into the first stitch and pull it snug. One more size 11. Again, just one size 11 in between each stitch down the side. So when you get into the arc of the curve, this is going to change a little bit, and instead of embellishing with 11s, we're going to be embellishing with 15s. Once you're done building the entire curve, you're going to start embellishing as you move back up toward the cube. To do this, you'll be exiting a base bead along the side. As you go up toward the cube from the curve, you're going to be stringing an 11 in between each of the stitches. And just like before, you're working from side bead to side bead out of the base. When you get to the last stitch next to the cube, instead of stringing a bead in between here, you're going to go straight up into the cube from the side. This is a really important part of the shaping because it pulls in this part of the shape on the piece. When you get up to the top of the cube, so you're going to turn, on each of the corners you want to string a size 15 seed bead. So we want to go all the way around. I'm just sort of having you take advantage of the fact that this is the direction you're already working, and that ultimately this task needs to be done. So that's what the top is going to look like. There's one little seed bead on each of the outer corners. You're going to continue back through what you just stitched in. Because again, what we're doing at this point is we're repositioning where the needle sits. Oops, I went through one extra there. So you're going to get to this point and then you're going to go back toward the side. As you're doing this, you want to skip that size 15 as you go down or it'll pull it out of place. So now you find yourself back on the opposite side here of where you skipped the bead and went directly from the side into the cube. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to go from the cube back down into the side. And then we're going to continue picking up one seed bead and going through the next stitch. As you're doing this, you're going to see your curve and your straight sides start to take shape a little bit more than they were before. Sometimes I will use a size 12 sharps for this instead of a beading needle if I feel like it's becoming overly tight and it's hard to get in here with a long needle. So now you can see I've completed it and gone all the way around the edge. But so far I've just done it on this one side. To get over to the other side, I'm going to follow back up through the thread path, up the side, and into the cube. Always when you're turning these corners at the top part of the cube, you want to make sure that you don't go through this size 15 first when you're doing that. Again, you will pull it out of position and it will look really weird. So now you see I flipped the piece over. And all I'm going to do is start from this point and embellish exactly the same way as I did on the other side. Remembering that from the stitch in the cube to the first stitch of the loop, I'm not going to string a bead in there. I'm just going to go straight from the one bead down into the next. And continue along the side. Once you've finished embellishing the second side, you're going to return back up into the cube. So go up the side, catch your thread, or hopefully not. And then what I want you to do from this side bead in the cube, again, do not go through the 15, go right into the 11. I always recommend to people that they don't do a lot of extra passes in the construction of this piece because you have to keep going back to the same areas again and again. So now I'm going to string 6 size 15 seed beads. From the top bead here, I'm going to string 6 size 15 seed beads, a size 11, a 3mm, and 2 more 15s. And I'm going to go straight down into this crystal on the side, this 4mm, and underneath that little embellishing picot. And pull my thread snug. Now, to save you a whole bunch of running back through the same beadwork, what you can do here, because no one will be able to see the thread, is you can kind of cheat and you can work your way through this curve. So you're just going to go from one 4mm crystal to the next, making sure that you stay up inside of the embellishment up in here. So you can see that your needle kind of naturally wants to go that way. And you also don't want to get caught on your embellishment in here. Once you've done this and you're emerging from the crystal on the other side, you're going to repeat that same string pattern. So now you see that string on here, 2 15s, a 3mm crystal, an 11, and 6 more 15s. And then I'm going to go up through the top 11 in the cube, the very top, and then I'm turning around here. And I'm going to go back down through all those beads I just strung. And then pull that up snug. If it's really loose right here, it's harder to get back into the 4mm. And then I'm going to pass back through this arc from 4mm to 4mm underneath the embellishment, underneath the little picots, in the same way that I did it the last time before I strung those beads. And then up through this last section, the first ones that I strung on in this part of the embellishment. Make sure you're pulling it good and snug. And then the first time I came out of this bead, I came out of it going this direction. So this time as I go back in, I want my needle to emerge that same direction so that the embellishment is actually tacked through this bead, going both ways. So to finish the piece off, once you've done the embellishment up the sides, the piece is done. So to finish it off, what I normally do is I take my thread tail and I weave it back through. I go along the sides and back up. If you feel like any of this embellishment is loose, you can also go back up and through this. It's a little bit harder to get up and in there. So, and I normally just weave off a couple inches of the tail of the thread and then go ahead and cut it. I don't actually tie knots. If you're more comfortable tying knots, by all means, go ahead and do it. But aside from that, the knots are not necessary. It's an earring, so it's not going to get any real hard wear. So to finish your earring, you're going to string a 4mm, a 3mm, and 3 size 11 seed beads onto about a 2-inch long head pin. And you're going to slide the head pin up through the cube from the bottom, from the inside of the loop, like that. And then to finish that part off, I always slide a 3mm crystal on there because it will kind of nest down into the top. And now I'm going to do a wire wrap on this. You want to make sure that when you do this that you've pulled this up snug. I'm going to put in my bend. Oops. Turn a small loop, clean that up a little bit. And wrap it down until it's tight up against the crystal. You don't want to get carried away because you can break the crystal. Tuck your end down. Then I'm going to open up an ear wire, slide it into the earring, close the loop, and the earring is now done. Thank you for coming to Mendo Moondrop Earrings on Beaducation.com. The last part of the earring that you do when you're putting it together, if you don't know how to do a wire wrapped loop, you can also just turn a basic round loop on the piece to finish it off. The wire wrap loop works a little bit better because it holds everything together a little bit more tightly.